The war room of the Galactic Council ship Harmony's Edge buzzed with desperate activity. Holographic displays showed red markers spreading across star systems like a deadly infection. Admiral Zexathara of the Kelthani Empire watched the tactical displays with growing dread, her 6 arms working frantically at different control panels. "How many worlds have fallen to the Void Swarm this cycle?" she asked, her voice betraying the exhaustion that had settled into her bones after 3 years of constant retreat. 17 more systems, Admiral," replied Captain Mordun, his crystalline features reflecting the crimson glow of the warning lights. "They're moving faster than we predicted. At this rate, they'll reach the core worlds within 2 galactic rotations." The Void Swarm had emerged from the dark space between galaxies 6 years ago, a mechanical plague that consumed everything in its path. They didn't negotiate, didn't communicate, didn't show mercy. They simply arrived, stripped worlds of all biological life and resources, then moved on to the next target. 37 species had already been completely wiped out, their civilizations reduced to cosmic dust. "What about the hegemony fleet?" Zexathara asked, though she already knew the answer. Decimated at the Rigel defense line yesterday, Admiral Korthax managed to evacuate only 12% of his forces before the swarm overwhelmed their positions. Mordun's voice carried the weight of another devastating loss. "The swarm's adaptive technology is beyond anything we've encountered. Every weapon we develop, every tactic we employ, they counter it within hours." Across the galaxy, the situation was the same everywhere. The proud Zelthian Confederacy, masters of energy weapons for millennia, had seen their most powerful battle stations torn apart like paper. The insectoid hive worlds, with their billions of warrior drones, had been consumed in days. Even the ancient ethereals, who had transcended physical form eons ago, found their dimensional fortresses breached and their essence devoured. In the council chambers, representatives from hundreds of species gathered in what many believed would be their final assembly. The Great Dome that had once echoed with debates about trade routes and territorial disputes now rang with pleas for salvation and accusations of incompetence. "We need to consider complete evacuation to the Andromeda Galaxy," suggested Ambassador Velkari of the Twilight Syndicate, her tentacles writhing with agitation. "Perhaps we can rebuild there." "Impossible," thundered General Grok of the Orcish battle clans, his massive fists slamming against the podium. "Our fastest ships would take 50,000 years to reach Andromeda. The swarm would follow our trail and hunt us down long before we could establish new colonies." High Counselor Thelnvar, ancient leader of the council, raised his translucent hand for silence. His species had lived for millions of years, had seen empires rise and fall, had witnessed the birth and death of stars. If anyone had wisdom to offer, it was him. "There is one possibility," he said slowly, his voice carrying across the vast chamber. "Something our archaeologists discovered in the ruins of the Forerunner civilization." The chamber fell silent. The Forerunners had vanished mysteriously 50 million years ago, leaving behind only scattered ruins and technological fragments that were still beyond the understanding of current galactic civilization. "They left records," Thelnvar continued, speaking of a species they encountered. "A young race from a small blue world in what we now call the Sol system. The records were fragmented, but they spoke of these beings with something approaching reverence." "Reverence?" scoffed Admiral Krexnor of the Draconian fleet. "What could possibly impress the Forerunners? They had technology that could reshape reality itself." "According to the fragments we've translated, this species possessed something the Forerunners called the Warrior's Paradox. They were simultaneously capable of great creation and terrible destruction. They could show mercy to their enemies while being utterly ruthless in pursuit of their goals. The Forerunners described them as the guardians who guard against guardians, the destroyers who build, the peaceful ones who master war. A series of dismissive sounds echoed through the chamber. Species that had mastered faster-than-light travel, energy manipulation, and dimensional engineering were not impressed by poetic descriptions of some primitive race. Even if such a species existed, said Chancellor Ixmira of the Techno Collective, her mechanical voice cutting through the ambient noise, they would have been extinct for 50 million years. Their sun would have died long ago. That's where you're wrong, Thelnvar replied, activating a holographic display. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected artificial signatures from the Sol system, electromagnetic radiation patterns consistent with an industrial civilization. They're still there. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. A species that had survived for 50 million years, that had caught the attention of the Forerunners themselves. But what could they possibly do that we cannot? Asked Admiral Zexathara. We have weapons that can crack planets, shields that can deflect the energy of dying stars, fleets numbering in the millions. If we can't stop the Void Swarm, what hope could some isolated species have? Perhaps, said Thelnvar quietly. We've been thinking about this all wrong. We've been trying to match the Swarm's technology, to fight fire with fire. But what if the answer isn't technological? What if it's something else entirely? The debate that followed was fierce and chaotic. Many species refused to consider seeking help from unknown primitives. Others saw it as their only remaining option. The Void Swarm continued its relentless advance, while the galaxy's leaders argued. It was young Captain Mordun who finally provided the catalyst for action. Rising from his position at the communications station, he announced in a clear voice that cut through the arguing, I've been monitoring the swarm's advance patterns. They'll reach the Sol system in 14 standard days. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Whether these mysterious humans were their salvation or just another species about to be consumed, they were running out of time. I volunteer to lead a diplomatic mission, Admiral Zexathara announced, surprising everyone, including herself. If these humans are truly what the Forerunner records suggest, then we need to reach them before the swarm does. If not, she paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. Then we'll have our answer soon enough. The vote was close, but passed. Within hours, a small fleet of the fastest ships in the galaxy was assembled, loaded with the most advanced translation technology, detailed scans of the Void Swarm, and what few Forerunner artifacts mentioned the mysterious humans. They prepared to make the journey to Sol. As Admiral Zexathara stood on the bridge of her flag, Haste Sol system appeared on their sensors like a revelation. Where Admiral Zexathara had expected to find a primitive civilization barely scratching the surface of space travel, she discovered something that defied all expectations. Massive orbital stations surrounded not just Earth, but Mars, the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, and even the distant reaches of Pluto. The asteroid belt had been converted into a mining and manufacturing complex that dwarfed anything in the galactic core. "Admiral!" Captain Mordun called out, his voice tight with disbelief. "I'm reading energy signatures that shouldn't be possible. Their power output it's matching some of our capital ships." But what truly stunned the galactic fleet was the immediate response to their arrival. Within minutes of dropping out of hyperspace, they found themselves surrounded by human vessels that had seemingly materialized from nowhere. Sleek ships with designs unlike anything in galactic databases, moving with precision that spoke of technology far more advanced than anyone had imagined. The communication came through on standard galactic frequencies, in perfect universal standard language. "Unknown vessels. This is Admiral Chen of the Human Solar Defense Force. You have entered Sol space during a time of high alert. State your intentions immediately." Zexathara felt her 6 hearts skip beats in unison. Not only were they communicating in perfect galactic standard, but they were doing so without any of the translation protocols her fleet had prepared. They already knew their language. "This is Admiral Zex Thara of the Galactic Council Fleet. We come seeking an audience with your leadership regarding a threat to all organic life in this galaxy." There was a pause, during which Zexathara could imagine the humans conferring among themselves. When the response came, it carried an undertone that sent chills through the alien crew. "Admiral Zexathara, we are aware of the entity you call the Void Swarm. You may approach Earth, but be advised that your ships will be escorted and monitored. Any aggressive action will be met with immediate and overwhelming response." They knew about the Void Swarm. Somehow, impossibly, they already knew. The journey to Earth was unlike anything Zexathara had experienced in her centuries of space travel. Human escort vessels moved around them in patterns that seemed almost choreographed, their formations shifting and adapting in ways that suggested a level of coordination that went beyond mere technology. It was art, it was poetry, it was terrifying. As they approached the blue-green world, more revelations awaited. The planet's surface was a tapestry of cities and wilderness, technology and nature existing in harmony. Massive space elevators stretched into orbit, connected to stations that hummed with activity. The moon had been transformed into what appeared to be a fortress, bristling with weapons that made Zexathara's own flagship seem primitive by comparison. "How is this possible?" whispered Dr. Velani, the fleet's xenobiologist. "Our records show this species should barely have achieved interplanetary travel 50 million years ago. They shouldn't have survived their own technological adolescence." Admiral Chen's voice came through the communication system again. "Admiral Zexathara, you and a small diplomatic party are cleared to land at Geneva Station. You'll find atmospheric processors available for your crew's breathing requirements." Geneva Station proved to be a marvel of engineering that defied everything the Galactic Council knew about human capabilities. The facility existed both on Earth's surface and in orbit simultaneously, connected by a space elevator that served as both transportation and a massive defensive weapon. The meeting hall could accommodate dozens of different atmospheric requirements simultaneously, suggesting the humans regularly hosted alien species. When Admiral Zexathara first laid eyes on Admiral Chen, she was struck by how ordinary he appeared. Humans were bipedal, like many species, with features that seemed unremarkable. But there was something in his eyes, an intensity, that reminded her of the ancient Forerunner artifacts. This was a being that had seen war, had made terrible decisions, had carried burdens that would break lesser minds. "Welcome to Earth, Admiral Zexathara," Chen said, his voice carrying warmth that seemed genuine. "I understand you've come about the Void Swarm. Please, sit. We have much to discuss." The conference room was simple by galactic standards, but Zexathara noticed details that spoke of deeper truths. Weapons that could level cities hung casually on walls as decorations. Art that depicted both creation and destruction adorned the space. And the humans themselves, she realized, carried themselves with the confidence of apex predators who had chosen to be guardians instead. "Admiral Chen," she began, "our records indicate that your species was contacted by the Forerunners 50 million years ago. Yet you're clearly far more advanced than our intelligence suggested. How is this possible?" Chen smiled, and it was neither warm nor cold, but something far more complex. "Admiral, your timeline is a bit off. The Forerunners didn't contact us 50 million years ago. They contacted us 50,000 years ago, and they didn't just contact us, they tested us." The revelation hit Zexathara like a physical blow. 50,000 years, not 50 million. That meant humans had achieved their current level of advancement in a time frame that should have been impossible for any organic species. "The test?" she managed to ask. A scenario not unlike what you're facing now, Chen replied. An implacable enemy that threatened all life in the galaxy. The Forerunners wanted to know if humanity could be trusted with the tools necessary to face such threats. We passed. Dr. Vellani leaned forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming diplomatic protocol. What tools? What did they give you? Chen exchanged glances with the other humans in the room. Not technology, Doctor. Knowledge, understanding. They showed us the fundamental principles that govern reality itself, physics that your scientists haven't even theorized yet. But more importantly, they taught us about responsibility. Responsibility? The power to unmake stars, to reshape worlds, to travel between dimensions. These things should not exist without wisdom to guide them. The Forerunners had learned this lesson too late. They gave us the choice: accept the knowledge and the burden it carries, or remain as we were. We chose to accept. Admiral Zexathara felt pieces of the puzzle clicking together. The warrior's paradox that the Forerunner records mentioned. Every human child learns it from birth, Chen nodded. We are guardians, not conquerors. We build rather than tear down whenever possible. But when something threatens the innocent, when diplomacy fails and mercy becomes complicity with evil, his expression hardened. Then we become something else entirely. And the Void Swarm? Has been under observation since it entered this galaxy. We've been tracking its movements, studying its capabilities, preparing countermeasures. We knew it would eventually reach inhabited space. We've been waiting. Waiting? Zexathara couldn't hide her shock. Your species has been watching the slaughter of 37 civilizations and doing nothing. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Every human present suddenly carried an air of barely contained violence that made Zexathara's survival instincts scream warnings. Admiral, Chen said quietly, his voice carrying undertones that suggested vast depths of controlled fury, do not mistake strategic patience for callous indifference. Every life lost to the Void Swarm weighs on us. Every world consumed is a failure we must answer for. But rushing into battle without understanding your enemy is how you ensure that even more lives are lost. He activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy, with the Void Swarm's path of destruction clearly marked. The swarm's behavior patterns, its technological adaptations, its resource requirements, its reproductive cycles, its command structure, its weaknesses. We needed to understand all of this before engaging. Because when humanity goes to war, Admiral, we go to war to win. Permanently. And now? Chen's smile this time was sharp enough to cut diamond. Now we know everything we need to know. The swarm is 12 days out from Seoul. It will arrive to find something it has never encountered before in its millions of years of existence. Which is? Prey. That hunts back. The meeting continued for hours, with humans sharing tactical information that revealed the true scope of their capabilities. They had ships that could phase between dimensions, weapons that could manipulate matter at the quantum level, defensive systems that could turn attacking forces against themselves. But more than the technology, it was their approach that left Zexathara stunned. Every battle plan included provisions for protecting civilians. Every weapon system had built-in safeguards to prevent collateral damage. Every strategy focused not just on defeating the Void Swarm, but on doing so in a way that would leave the galaxy better than before. Admiral Chen, she finally asked, why are the Void Swarm arrived at Sol System like a plague of mechanical locusts, their dark ships blotting out the light of distant stars? Admiral Zexathara watched from her observation post on Luna as billions of enemy vessels poured through hyperspace rifts, their collective mass larger than some moons. This was the force that had consumed 37 civilizations without losing a single engagement. But Sol System was ready. The first surprise came when the swarm attempted to establish their standard perimeter. Instead of finding scattered defensive positions they could systematically overwhelm, they encountered something unprecedented. The entire solar system had become a weapon. Admiral Chen's voice carried across all frequencies as human ships decloaked throughout the system. Not hundreds, not thousands, but millions of vessels that had been hiding in plain sight, disguised as asteroids, space stations, even cosmic debris. The asteroid belt itself began to move, revealing that entire sections had been converted into mobile battle platforms. "Void swarm entity!" Chen's voice rang out across space with the authority of absolute certainty. "You have entered human space with hostile intent. You will cease all aggressive actions and withdraw immediately, or face the consequences." The swarm's response was predictable. They had never negotiated, never retreated, never shown any behavior except endless consumption. A wave of their harvester ships moved toward Earth, intent on beginning their standard feeding cycle. They never reached their target. The space around them suddenly filled with weapons fire unlike anything the watching galactic observers had ever witnessed. Beams of pure energy that seemed to erase matter from existence. Projectiles that phased through shields as if they weren't there before exploding with the fury of miniature stars. Gravity weapons that turned the swarm's own momentum against them, causing massive ships to tear themselves apart. But what truly shocked Admiral Zexathera was the precision. In the middle of the largest space battle in galactic history, with millions of combatants engaged across an area spanning billions of kilometers, not a single human weapon struck anything other than its intended target. No friendly fire, no collateral damage, no accidents. "How is this possible?" Dr. Vellani whispered, her equipment struggling to track the incredible number of variables in the battle. The computational requirements alone should be impossible. The answer came from an unexpected source. Captain Mordun, monitoring human communications, suddenly looked up with an expression of awe. "Admiral, I don't think they're using computers to coordinate this battle. I think they're using their minds." It was true. Somehow, impossibly, every human vessel was operating as part of a single vast consciousness. Not a hive mind like the insectoid species, but something far more complex. Individual creativity and initiative combined with perfect coordination and shared knowledge. Each ship captain made their own decisions while simultaneously being aware of every other captain's actions. The Void Swarm, which had adapted to every weapon and tactic used against it over millions of years, found itself completely outmatched. Human ships fought in ways that seemed to violate the basic principles of warfare. They attacked from directions that should have been impossible, used weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics, and employed tactics that transformed the swarm's own adaptive capabilities against itself. A group of human vessels led a formation of swarm ships into what appeared to be a trap, only to phase shift at the last moment and leave the enemy facing mirrors of their own adaptive technology. The swarm ships, trying to counter what they perceived as human weapons, ended up adapting to counter themselves, creating a cascade failure that rippled through their entire formation. "They're not just fighting the swarm," Admiral Zexathera realized, watching the battle unfold. "They're teaching it to destroy itself." Another wave of swarm vessels attempted to use their superior numbers to overwhelm human positions through sheer mass. Instead, they found themselves facing weapons that seemed to multiply the more ships that attacked. A single human destroyer somehow managed to engage and defeat an entire swarm battle group by using their own quantum entanglement against them. But the true demonstration of human capabilities came when the swarm deployed their ultimate weapon, the Void Mothership, a vessel the size of a small planet. It had been the final nail in the coffin for dozens of civilizations. Its quantum disruption fields could tear apart matter at the atomic level, and its adaptive armor had never been breached. The humans responded by having Admiral Chen's flagship approach it alone. Admiral Chen, what are you doing? Zexathara broadcast frantically. That ship has enough firepower to sterilize solar systems. Admiral, came Chen's calm response. Sometimes the best way to deal with a bully is to show them what real power looks like. What followed redefined everything the Galactic Council thought they understood about physics. Chen's ship, a vessel no larger than a standard cruiser, began to glow with energy that registered as impossible on every sensor. Space itself seemed to bend around the human vessel as it approached the massive void mothership. The mothership fired its planet-killer weapons, beams of destructive force that had never failed to obliterate their targets. The beams struck Chen's ship and simply stopped. Not deflected, not absorbed, but frozen in place, as if time itself had paused around the human vessel. Then Chen's ship began to sing. It was impossible. Sound cannot travel in space. Yet somehow every being in the Sol system could hear it, a complex harmony that seemed to resonate with the fundamental frequencies of reality itself. The song grew in complexity and power, and as it did, the void mothership began to change. Its dark metal hull started to brighten. Its weapon systems powered down. Its defensive fields collapsed. And then, impossibly, the massive vessel began to break apart, not exploding, not being destroyed, but peacefully disintegrating as if its very atoms were choosing to return to their component parts. "What did you do?" Zexathara whispered, too stunned to speak louder. "We reminded it what it used to be," Chen replied softly. "The Void Swarm isn't evil, Admiral. It's lost. 1 billion years ago, they were organic beings like us, trying to survive in a hostile universe. They chose technology over biology, efficiency over emotion, survival over life. We just helped them remember what they gave up." Across the battlefield, similar transformations were taking place. Swarm ships were powering down their weapons, their adaptive systems no longer trying to counter human tactics, but instead trying to understand them. The mechanical plague that had consumed civilizations was remembering what it meant to be alive. The largest space battle in galactic history ended not with destruction, but with redemption. In the aftermath, as human medical ships moved to assist former swarm vessels that were now struggling to remember how to exist as individuals rather than components of a collective, Admiral Zexathara found herself in another meeting with Admiral Chen. "The Forerunners," she said quietly. "They chose you well." Chen smiled sadly. "Actually, Admiral, they didn't choose us. We chose ourselves. The Forerunners gave us a choice, and we chose to accept responsibility for power that could reshape reality. That's the difference between authority and leadership. Authority is imposed. Leadership is accepted. And now? Now we help rebuild. The Void Swarm was a symptom, not the disease. The galaxy has been fragmenting for millennia. Species growing increasingly isolated, competitive, suspicious. The real work starts now, building something better." Over the following months, the galaxy watched in amazement as humanity began that work. They established the Galactic Development Council, not to rule, but to coordinate. They shared technology freely, but only with species that committed to using it responsibly. They mediated disputes, not through force, but through demonstration of better alternatives. Most remarkably, they began the process of rehabilitating the former Void Swarm. With human help, the mechanical collective slowly remembered how to be individual beings. They took new names, learned new purposes, and became some of the galaxy's most effective advocates for peaceful cooperation. The Kelthani Empire, which had once prided itself on its military might, found itself learning about agriculture from humans who could make barren worlds bloom. The Techno-Collective discovered that their mechanical perfection was hollow compared to human innovation that combined logic with intuition. The ancient ethereals, who had thought themselves above physical concerns, learned about the beauty that came from embracing, rather than transcending, their nature. Admiral Zexathara, now serving as the Galactic Council's liaison to humanity, often found herself reflecting on how much had changed. The galaxy was still vast, still dangerous, still full of challenges, but now there was hope. Now there was an example of what was possible when power served wisdom rather than ambition. The legends spoke of humans as warriors without equal, as guardians who could face any threat. The truth was both simpler and more complex. Humanity had learned that the greatest victory was not defeating your enemies, but helping them become something better than they were. In the end, the Void Swarm had been right about one thing. They had encountered something unprecedented in their millions of years of existence. Not prey that fought back, but predators who chose to heal rather than hunt. The galaxy would never be the same, and for the first time in eons, that was cause for celebration rather than fear. Standing on the observation deck of the new Galactic Cooperation Station, watching ships from hundreds of species working together on projects that would have been impossible just years before, Zexathara smiled. The humans had taught them all an invaluable lesson. Legends became reality not through power, but through choosing to use that power for something greater than yourself. The age of isolation was over. The age of cooperation had begun, and somewhere among the stars, the Forerunners would have been proud. You telling us all this? Why trust us with knowledge of your capabilities? Because after we defeat the Void Swarm, the galaxy is going to need guidance. The same forces that created this crisis, the territorial disputes, the resource wars, the inability to cooperate in the face of extinction, will all still exist. Someone needs to help build something better. And you believe humanity should be that someone? Chen shook his head. We believe everyone should be that someone. Humanity will provide security and knowledge, but the future of the galaxy belongs to all of us. The Forerunners made the mistake of trying to guide from above. We won't repeat their error. As the meeting concluded and Zexathara prepared to return to her ship, she realized that everything the galaxy thought it knew about power, about war, about civilization itself, was about to change. The humans weren't just going to fight the Void Swarm. They were going to demonstrate what was possible when technology served wisdom rather than ambition. The countdown continued, but now it carried a different meaning. Not the time until destruction, but the time until the galaxy learned what it meant when legends became reality. Ship. Watching the star lines stretch as they entered hyperspace, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were either about to discover the galaxy's salvation or witness its final chapter. The ancient Forerunner record spoke of humans with an almost mystical reverence, but 50 million years was a long time. What had become of the species that had so impressed the most advanced civilization the galaxy had ever known? Behind them, the Void Swarm continued its inexorable advance, consuming world after world, system after system. The countdown to Sol had begun, and with it, the countdown to either the galaxy's greatest discovery or its final defeat. The small fleet pushed their engines beyond safe limits, racing against time itself as they hurtled toward a small blue world and a species that existed somewhere between legend and hope.